Welcome back to week 11 of the DSR channel, and we are finishing off the general feats in the Player's Handbook 2024, and this is part 4, so the last. And here's all the ranks. So if you don't want to watch anymore, you're done. You can finish it right here. I have updated the CSV and the PDF in the Google Drive that's linked in the description to version 11. It's got all of this stuff in there, so you can look at it offline when you're making your characters. Skill Expert. You can increase any ability score you want by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency in one skill of your choice, and you gain expertise in one skill that you already have proficiency in. So you get one of each. This one's great. I give it an A for face, an A for scout, and an A for versatility. Still, and I say that because they just added this one, Zentarum Tactics, which also gives you expertise, but you can move the expertise with every long rest. So if one day you know you're going into town and there's going to be a lot of social encounters, you can switch the expertise to a face skill. And then the next day, if you're not going to be in town, you're out in the wilderness, going into dungeons and enemies' lairs, you can switch it to a scout skill, and now you're a better scout. Or you can switch it to a knowledge skill so you can identify monsters better. So Zentarum Tactics, the expertise portion specifically, is better than the skill expert portion in every way. Here's where Zentarum Tactics is not better. It doesn't give you the skill proficiency, it just gives you the expertise. And it has a prerequisite of Zentarum Ruffian feat, which is an origin feat, so you have to have that first. And you can only choose dexterity or charisma score to increase with Zentarum Tactics, whereas skill expert lets you choose any ability score. So I'd say they're both an A. Skill expert used to be a lot more valuable before this one, but now I'd say it's still an A. Yeah, so still good, but a bit devalued by Zentarum Tactics. Skulker, you can increase your dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You have 10 feet of blind sight. You have Fog of War, which gives you advantage on dexterity stealth checks that you make to take the hide action during combat. And Sniper, if you make an attack roll while hidden and the roll misses, making the attack roll doesn't reveal your location. Okay, notice it says an attack roll, not a ranged attack roll. So this works on melee attack rolls as well. And yes, go watch my stealth video. Rules as written, they don't spot you if you just walk into line of sight. It's like not immediate. Now the DM may rule it that way, ask them, but rules as written, they don't automatically spot you. They would have to make perception checks against you, and unless they spend an action during combat to make an active perception check against you, they only get passive perception checks against you when you walk into line of sight. Which means if you're a rogue, you run around the corner to hide, and you're going to run out and stab them, you can run right up to them, you're still hidden, you miss with the first attack roll, you're still hidden, and so you still have advantage on the second attack roll. So you can still try that and maybe still get advantage. Sorry, you'd still have advantage. And if you still hit with the second one, that now qualifies for sneak attack and everything else as a rogue. So this one is better, probably than you think. The blind sight is good. I'm going to give it a B for blinds, for the self buff on blind sight. The skirmisher and ranged functions, because ranged attackers also would want to be able to run around corners, hide, come out. As long as you have a bonus action, some way to hide, take the hide action and still attack, whether it's hide as a bonus action or some sort of hide with your action, bonus action attack. I think there's some ways to do that. If you have one, as long as you have a way to do that, this can be valuable for you. The reason why it's just not as good as you might think is because Boots of Elvenkind give you advantage on dexterity stealth checks all the time in all situations, and it's an uncommon item without attunement. So it's super easy to get. You don't have to spend an attunement slot on it. And I think that kind of devalues the main benefit of this, depending on what you think the main benefit is. But that's why I ranked down the skirmisher range kind of function you can get out of this down to a C. But blind sight is still pretty valuable. And everybody benefits from blind sight. It's just that in early game, blind sight will probably rarely come up. Towards a late game, like tiers 3 and 4, it's going to come up a lot more often. So in the late game, it's probably an A for the blind sight. In the early game, it's probably a D. Like in tier 1, it's probably a D for blind sight. Maybe in tier 2, it's a C. I don't know. So I'm kind of averaging it out and saying it's a B overall, just based on how frequently it comes up, depending on what tier you're playing in. So I don't think, since Boots of Elvenkind is so easy to get, I would not make this a first pick at level 4. It might be a pick I take at level 8 or 12 is where I'd really be looking at this. Slasher feat. You can increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Hamstring. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals slashing damage, you can reduce the speed of that creature by 10 until the start of your next turn. Enhanced critical. When you score a critical hit that deals slashing damage to a creature, it has disadvantage on attack rolls until the start of your next turn. Okay. So this one is has never been as good as I just want it to be, right? You really want this idea of like this specializing in slashing weapons to just do more. And this just doesn't do very much, okay? Causing them to have disadvantage on all of their attack rolls when you crit. Like if it just gave them disadvantage on attack rolls all the time, this would be super strong, a super strong control effect. But since it's and slash support effect, right? Because you're reducing the chance they could hit your enemies. But since it's only on a crit, you're talking about 5% of your attacks are going to do this. A bit higher if you have advantage, and so if you have attack more often, maybe you can trigger it more often. If you specialize as a crit fisher, this could actually be like a B type functionality, right? If you specialize in crit fishing for your build, that could be a B, okay? But that's a kind of a not a common build, and you have to know what you're doing to make that work, okay? The hamstring is easy to use, but reducing their speed by 10 feet just isn't very much. And so between those two effects, I'm going to give it as a C for controller functionality and a D for support functionality. Now, the thing about speed reductions is that they increase in value if you stack them. Okay, so if you have the slow weapon mastery, which is easy to get, right? If you have weapon masteries on your class, then doing both of these to a creature reduces their speed by 20. Okay, so you can do that slasher once per turn. Slow is every hit. Now slow doesn't stack with itself. So if you hit the same creature multiple times with the slow weapon mastery, it doesn't stack. It says that right there. But you can stack the two of these together on one creature, right? Slasher once per turn, and reduce their speed by 20. And now that's actually a kind of a crippling amount of slowing. Okay. If you can get a third slowing effect, which there are plenty of ways to do that, now if you reduce their speed by 30, a lot of creatures only have a movement speed of 0. So making it so they can't move at all is super crippling to a creature. If they don't have a good ranged attack, they might not be able to do anything to you, right? So with the right build, this is actually an A. I'd say this is an A tier feat for just the right build. But you need to specifically build around this, have multiple ways to reduce their speed with one hit or within a few hits with your same action. Yeah, you've got to know how to stack that all together. Then it's an A. Otherwise, this is like a C and a D. Okay, so mileage varies depending on your experience level with how to make a build. The Speedy feat. You increase your dexterity or constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. You increase your speed by 10. That's all the time, always on, which is great. When you take the dash action, you ignore difficult terrain. Now, that's only terrain that's specifically designated as difficult terrain, but something like a plant growth does not designate difficult terrain. It just says it costs you 4 times as much. So that doesn't do anything against like plant growth or transmute rock. But a lot of other spell effects cause difficult terrain, and so this would ignore those, which is a lot of the time. And if your DM tends not to play with like maps that actually have like terrain effects and altitudes, maybe just encourage them, ask them if they could start trying to do that. Now, be nice about it because DMs are doing a lot of work in the middle of running a game. And so it's just hard to remember all these things. And so just kind of nudge them, say, hey, if you could try that a little more and practice. And then you guys could all be cool about it. And when the DM's trying to practice applying terrain effects to maps, be understanding. It's going to take them a little more time to figure things out. So, you all be cool while they're learning that. Agile movement. Opportunity attacks against you have disadvantage always, which is nice. Not as good as it used to be. If you attack them, they just couldn't opportunity attack you back at all. So I'm going to give this a B for skirmishers because this is kind of a skirmisher package, right? You get a lot of skirmisher functionality in this one package, which is nice. The only thing it doesn't give you is the ability to dash as a bonus action, which there didn't used to be a feat that did that. Now we do have one from Asterian's Book of Hungers. The Vampire Devotee, I think is what it's called, right? So yeah, combine that with this, and you got like a whole skirmisher package in one for any class. You don't have to be a rogue, a monk, or anything like that. Okay, so it's like a B for a skirmisher package, which is nice. It doesn't really increase your damage, which is the main thing you're trying to accomplish as a skirmisher. This is like the secondary function of a skirmisher. So I'm going to give it a B, but it's also a B for self-buff, just the ability to move 10 more feet. And then a C for survival to just not provoke opportunity attacks. Most of the time, if you're facing an opportunity attack, you have better ways. You probably have better ways to avoid it. Like, if you're a caster, you probably have some kind of teleport to just teleport out of there. Or you're a cleric and you just have a bunch of armor and you're going to say, no, I'm not going to leave then. I'm just going to stand here with my spirit guardians, wrecking them. I'm going to make them run away and I'll get an opportunity attack on them. Okay. So it's kind of a C, but when opportunity attacks happen against you, this will be nice to cause them to have disadvantage because that has a big effect. Spell Sniper. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. Your attack rolls for spells ignore half cover and 3/4 cover. Casting in melee, being within 5 feet of an enemy doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack rolls with spells. And increased range. When you cast a spell that has a range of at least 10 feet and requires you to make an attack roll, you can increase the spell's range by 60. So if you want to be a ranged single target damage dealer as a spellcaster, you basically need this. Yeah, and so for that specific kind of build, I give this a B. It doesn't increase your damage. There's not a lot of ways to increase your spell damage. And it doesn't apply to a lot of builds. A lot of times, if you're going to be a spellcaster that's dealing damage, you're probably a blaster, which is dealing AoE damage, right? Fireball, shatter, synaptic static, things like that. And this does nothing to help blasting, okay? It's just a ranged single target damage dealer. Now, the most common spellcasting ranged attacker build is a warlock with Eldritch Blast and Agonizing Blast, okay? And for them, this is quite good. So if you're that warlock focusing on Agonizing Blast and Eldritch Blast, then this is probably an A for you. For all other spellcasters, if you have a lot of ranged spell attack cantrips, and you're trying to like maximize your damage with those, at low levels, this is like a D for that, okay? At higher levels, when your attack cantrips really scale up, right? In tier 4, it's like 4d10 for Firebolt. Well, if you're a sorcerer and you can quicken it, now you can cast it twice. You're shooting it twice, potentially for 8d10 damage without spending a spell slot. This might be an A for you as well, okay? But it scales up as your cantrips scale up. And the cantrips, I only give them like a D for single target range damage. No, I think I give it a C in tier 2. It's a D in tier 1 for cantrips, okay? So the value of this scales up as the damage of your cantrips scale up. All right, Telekinetic. You can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. You learn the Mage Hand spell. You can cast it without verbal somatic components, which are all the components it has, which means no components. You can make the spectral hand completely invisible so people can't see it. And the range and distance it can be away from you increase by 30 feet when you cast this. Nice for versatility. So this is a D, not because it's bad, but because it does add a little versatility, right? Mage Hand is versatile. Being able to do it invisibly and without any spell components is a little more versatility. But this is not like going to be game defining or session defining. It's going to be useful once in a while to like reach through a portcullis and pull a lever, or I don't know, trick somebody. Anyway, I'm sure, and it's going to vary by your creativity. So the more creative you are with the use, the more value you're going to get out of this. I'm going to say on average, it's kind of like a small amount of versatility it's adding, which means it's a D. It's giving you a small, right? That's what these rankings mean when we're talking about feats, right? It adds that kind of functionality. And all the blank cells, it adds nothing there, okay? All right, so Telekinetic Shove. As a bonus action, you can telekinetically shove a creature within 30 feet of yourself. They make a strength save, and if they fail, they either are moved 5 feet toward or directly away from you, which is actually pretty good. There's not a lot of ways to, let's say, weaponize your bonus action like this, and this is a control effect. So it's not going to deal any damage, but if your party has, or you have like emanations that deal damage, you could be pushing and pulling people in and out of these emanations, pushing them across spike growth, and every 5 feet is 2d4 damage. Push them off a cliff, depending on the terrain. So I'm going to give it a B because that's nice. Plus, partly because it weaponizes your bonus action, but also it's not a spell, right? So you can still use your action to cast a spell, and this is not a spell. So it doesn't prevent you from casting another spell. So yeah, B for controller effect. Telepathic. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. Telepathic utterance. You can speak telepathically to any creature you can see within 60 feet of yourself. Your telepathic utterances are in a language you know, and the creature understands you only if you know the language. Your communication doesn't give the creature the ability to respond to you telepathically. So this is one of the weaker forms of telepathy. It's not two-way, and you have to have a shared language. Like the general form of telepathy is you don't have to have a shared language. As long as they speak a language, then you convey I guess you convey your thoughts as concepts and images and not as words. With this, you're actually using words. So it's not going to help you speak with creatures that you don't share a language with. It gives you quiet, I guess you can be quiet when you're trying to send messages to your allies or things like that. It can help you with face. Let's get on to the detect thoughts part. So the detect thoughts part basically gives you the detect thoughts spell. You always have it prepared. You can cast it once for free, kind of all the same stuff that usually works, and that can give you advantages in when social situations to like read somebody's thoughts. Now they might know that you're doing it, so so the best way to leverage this would be like you're in a place where you can't be seen. They can't see that you're doing this. So you're looking through a window or you're shrouded or something like that. So they know somebody's reading their thoughts potentially. They just don't know who's doing it. And then you're also, as you read their thoughts, telepathically sending, the information to your ally who actually is trying to talk with them and influence them. So it's a bit of versatility, a bit of face functionality. I suppose it might be slightly useful in scouting situations to like send information back to the rest of the party. So maybe I should rate it there too, but it's pretty minimal. There's a lot of ways to do that, and I would not spend a feat on that. That would be like a D functionality for the scout, I guess, is where I'd put that. Yeah, I'll put that in the CSV. I'll update the CSV to have that, and the PDF. But it's very minimal, right? The message cantrip does that. Same thing. So that would be less expensive than this. The Warcaster feat. This one's very popular. So you can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. You get advantage on Constitution saving throws that you make to maintain concentration. And you get reactive spell. When a creature provokes an opportunity attack from you by leaving your reach, you can take a reaction to cast a spell at the creature. Rather than making an opportunity attack, the spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. Somatic components. You can perform the somatic components of spells even when you have a weapon or a shield in one or both hands, which is quite handy. Pun not intended. All right, so the main reason you get this is for the advantage on concentration saving throws or saving throws to maintain concentration, which is very good. If you're any kind of a spellcaster that's got any kind of concentration spell effects, you probably want this unless you have this through some other way, right? The Foresight spell can give you advantage all the time. There's an Eldritch Invocation that gives you advantage all the time. There's a old Artificer Infusion that helps with this. That might go away. We'll see if that comes out in the book that's coming in 3 days. I'll start covering that. So I don't know. So there's other ways to get this advantage. But that's the main reason you take it. And it's quite good. So if you're any kind of spellcaster, this is worth taking probably right at level 4. If not, you'd want it by level 8 to just shore up your concentration spells. Okay, reactive spell. This one was hotly debated for a while. The debate centered around whether or not you can make an opportunity attack against an ally, and if so, replace that with a buff spell. So you can cast haste on an ally as they run away from you. And it went back and forth and back and forth. And actually, I was swayed every time they went back and forth. I was like, oh, yes, clearly you can't. And then the next one was like, okay, clearly you can. And then the next one, clearly you can't. And the next one, you can. And when the Dungeon Dudes finally did their interview with the designers, and the designers were like, well, we didn't intend that, but I think that you could interpret the rules that way. And if somebody did that, I would probably allow it. Okay, so yeah, there's enough wiggle room that a DM could go either way on this and not be wrong. It is, kind of squirrely to say, are you allowed to make opportunity attacks against your allies? Because you are attacking, right? And the section that talks about opportunity attacks is talking about enemies. So it's kind of gray. Now you could just there's nothing stopping a player from saying, well, I consider them an enemy, I guess, an ally enemy. I don't know. You could go either way. It's fine. And the more I think about this, the more I think if a player wanted to try to do this and just buff an ally as they're running past with a reaction, I would allow it. More because the support role is one that just isn't utilized very much, right? There's just not very often that players are engaging in teamwork and buffing each other. And if this made somebody want to lean into that more and buff their ally, go ahead, right? It's not going to add much power because most of the good support spells are concentration. And whether you do it with your action or your reaction, it doesn't matter. You can still only concentrate on one. So I'd probably allow it. And if the whole party wanted to all spend, use the reactions, the barbarian ran past and all spend their concentration and reactions to buff that barbarian as he was running past, Sure, you're going to have one super strong barbarian and everybody else is concentrating on a spell, um, not benefiting themselves or doing anything else. It's just buffing the barbarian, which I'm fine with, right? Like, I would love to see that kind of teamwork happening in a party. So let's go for it. Sure, why not? Simply on the principle of, I think the support role is underpowered, I don't know about underpowered, underrepresented. People just don't do it enough, and teamwork is a lot of fun during the game. So I allow it in my games, but I totally think it's okay if a DM says no. There's no way that works, and that's fine. Like, I think this is one of the areas where it's gray enough that no matter which way you go, you're right. It's valid. Okay. Okay. So that's Warcaster. The somatic component one is also nice. Almost nobody is nitpicky. No, almost no DM is nitpicky about the casting components, spell components. I am probably one of the more picky ones, and even I don't like. I try to run all the rules correctly all the time, except in the exceptions of rule of cool. Okay, and even I don't run all the spell components exactly as it's written because it's just too complex, right? And if you saw Treant Monk, he made some commentary on that too just the other day, where he in one of his videos, and I do it for the same reason. I tone down the rules as written on that for the same reason he does, because they're just too complicated, too complex, too nuanced, and D&D Beyond doesn't do anything to help you with them. So it's just too hard. It just makes the game, it bogs the game down too much and is not fun, and then it ruins the fun of the game. And for that, I tone that one down. But even I say, like, you still have to have a hand free unless you're holding an arcane focus or you have Warcaster. As long as you're holding an arcane focus or Warcaster, I don't care. You can cast any spell, right? That's it. And I think that's basically how Treant Monk runs it too. So good to know that we're on the same page. Well, Weapon Master. You can increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. And basically, you get to be able to get weapon mastery with one weapon. You pick one weapon, and you have weapon mastery with it. It has to be a weapon you're proficient with, and yeah, and you can change it whenever you finish a long rest. So this is yet another one that you read it and you're like, wow, that sounds cool and that's great, and it seems a lot better than it really is. And here's the problems with it. So first up, if you want weapon mastery and it's going to make a big difference for you, you probably already have it, right? Fighters, paladins, rangers, and rogues already have weapon mastery. The ones that might really want weapon mastery, or sorry, and barbarians have weapon mastery. So it really comes down to who doesn't have weapon mastery. It's the monk, right? The monk is the only martial who doesn't have weapon mastery. That's the only time I've ever actually taken this, I think. Nope, I put it on a bard, the Whispers bard. All right, so if you're a Gish or a monk, you might want this. Okay, here's the problem with it though. It's only strength or dexterity. So even for Gishes and monks, the monk, yeah, you can benefit from dexterity for this. So it's pretty common that a monk takes this, like with a dagger. So now they can leverage the Nick property, get 3 attacks with their action, and then 3 more attacks with their flurry of blows, right? And then the monk's making 6 attacks at level 11, or it's like at level 5, it's 3 and 2, or level, 1 through 4, it's 2 and 2. So you can get a lot of attacks with a monk, and the monk doesn't care if they're using a dagger, right? Because when it's a monk weapon, it uses their martial arts die. So it would still scale up to a D12 with a dagger at level 17. So this is pretty good for monks if that's the way you want to go. I wouldn't say this is so strong for monks that you should always do this as a monk. I definitely don't think that. This is just if you want to go that way, this is a solid build for monks, okay? Then for Gishes, you might want to go that way, but the problem for Gishes, like a Valor Bard, a Warlock, or a Blade Singer, or please let the Artificer, Battlesmith, and the Tank be good when the book comes out in a couple of days. Maybe you want one of those. You want something like this, although I don't think I think they're still going to make the same problem they've had before with the armor, which is you can't get mastery in the gauntlets because the gauntlets are a unique weapon and it doesn't qualify for weapon master. So probably just the Battlesmith. Okay. This doesn't boost any of your mental stats. So if you want to take this as a warlock, well, you can't get your charisma maxed out, and you want to max out your charisma first. So you might not take this until level 12, I guess. And even then, you'd pick probably dexterity, I guess. And just how much is it helping you? It's hard to say, right? Same thing goes for the Blade Singer Wizard. You'd want intelligence first. Dexterity, you probably wouldn't want to level 12. I mean, surely there's builds around around those things using dexterity for a Blade Singer instead. You could do a strength for a warlock instead of charisma, but then all of your spells are weaker. Right? You can do this if you know what you're doing, but for the general population of the builds, I say this is a C for tanks, frontliners, skirmishers, and controllers. The controller functionality it gives you is the weapon masters. A lot of those are control effects like sap and push and topple and slow. Those are different kinds of control effects. So it's a C for all of those. It just doesn't fit well on most builds. And by the time you're level 12, most of the weapon masters, if you're like one of those gishes, most of the weapon masteries just aren't going to add that much of a control effect. Like probably the best thing you can do is on some of them, right? The Bladesinger, you can't use heavy weapons, right? So getting like cleave on a great axe or a halberd for a bard or a blade warlock would be pretty good. I think that the cleave weapon mastery scales really well. You can get up to 2 attacks with it with your reaction and your action. So that's 2 extra attacks per turn. It's pretty nice. Graze, I don't think is that good. It's okay. So anyway, it's just, yeah, it's hard to fit this on your build. So I give it a C across the board for all the ones that it might be relevant for: the tank functionality, frontliner functionality, skirmisher functionality, and controller functionality. And that is the last of them. We are finished with all of the general feats in the player's handbook. I'm going to make that one correction for the telepathic. Yeah, telepathic scout function. I'll update that in this version of the PDF and CSV on the Google Drive. And then the next 2 things I want to do, hopefully before the Artificer book comes out on Tuesday, the digital pre-release, is I want to still try to finish the epic boons in the player's handbook. And I also want to do the healer role, which is one I'm really interested in. I think it's fascinating and I want to talk about. I'm hoping I can finish both of those before Tuesday. It's not a lot of time. But anyway, thanks for watching. Remember to be cool with people when you play D&D because it's a game and these people are your friends or could become your friends. And who doesn't want more friends? Catch you next time.